Thanksgiving was supposed to be a celebration of gratitude, a moment where families come together, share stories, laugh over old memories, and feel the warmth of belonging. But the moment Evelyn slid a pink envelope across the table toward her daughter-in-law, Maya, the entire room froze. The clinking of wine glasses stopped. The laughter died in throats. Even the children playing in the corner seemed to sense that something terrible was about to unfold. Inside that envelope wasn't a gift. It wasn't a card filled with kind words or an invitation to something special. No. Inside that envelope were divorce papers, signed, stamped, prepared by her mother-in-law herself. Maya's hands trembled as she stared at the pale pink paper resting in front of her plate, right next to the mashed potatoes she had spent hours preparing. Her husband, Daniel, sat across from her with a smirk pulling at the corner of his mouth, his phone raised, ready to record her humiliation. The family watched, confused, uncomfortable, unsure whether this was some kind of twisted joke. But what the family didn't know, what Evelyn and Daniel couldn't possibly have anticipated, was that Maya had been preparing for this moment. She had seen it coming, and this Thanksgiving would be remembered forever, not for the turkey, not for the pumpkin pie, but for the revenge she served cold. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. So many questions hang in the air like smoke after a fire. Why would a mother-in-law bring divorce papers to a family holiday? What kind of person orchestrates humiliation at a dinner table, surrounded by relatives, by children, by people who are supposed to love one another? And why was Daniel recording? Was this planned? Was this performance? Was Maya meant to break down in front of everyone so they could all witness her fall from grace? But there's more beneath the surface. There's something Maya discovered weeks before this night, something that made her blood run cold and her heart harden like stone, something that made her realize she wasn't just fighting for her marriage anymore. She was fighting for her dignity, her future, her very survival, and the revenge she had been quietly, carefully planning. It would shock everyone at that table. It would tear apart the illusion of the perfect family. And it would leave Evelyn and Daniel wishing they had never underestimated the quiet woman who always smiled, always served, always stayed silent. But silence, as they were about to learn, is not the same as weakness. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever been in a situation where people assumed you didn't know what was happening, where they thought you were too naive, too trusting, too weak to see through their lies? Maya had been living in that reality for months. Every smile she gave them was a mask. Every kind word was a strategic move, and every single day she was gathering the ammunition she would need to fight back. Because here's the truth that Evelyn and Daniel failed to understand. The quietest person in the room is often the one paying the most attention. The one who smiles and nods while you reveal your plans is the one who's already 3 steps ahead of you. And Maya? She had been documenting everything. Maya wasn't always this guarded. There was a time when she believed in love, in loyalty, in the idea that if you worked hard enough and gave enough of yourself, people would see your worth. She had been a nurse for nearly 15 years, working long shifts at a children's hospital, coming home exhausted but fulfilled. She loved her job. She loved helping people. The parents of the children she cared for would often tell her that she had a gift, that her kindness made the darkest moments bearable. She remembered one little boy named Tommy, who had been in the ICU for weeks. His parents were terrified, barely holding themselves together. Maya would sit with them during her breaks, bring them coffee, listen to their fears. When Tommy finally recovered and went home, his mother hugged Maya so tightly she could barely breathe, whispering, "Thank you," over and over again. That was who Maya was. Someone who gave everything to the people around her. Someone who believed that love and kindness were always worth it. And when she met Daniel 12 years ago at a charity fundraiser for the hospital, she thought she had found someone who valued the same things she did: kindness, honesty, partnership. Daniel had seemed different from the other wealthy men at the event. He didn't flaunt his money or talk endlessly about his accomplishments. He asked her questions about her work, seemed genuinely interested in her passion for helping children. He told her that his mother had been sick when he was young and that nurses like Maya had made all the difference. He made her feel seen, valued, special. Their courtship was a whirlwind. Expensive dinners, weekend getaways, flowers delivered to the hospital that made her co-workers tease her about having a Prince Charming. When Daniel proposed 6 months after they met, Maya said yes without hesitation. She thought she had found her person. She thought she had found home. Their wedding was small but beautiful. Daniel's family was wealthy, old money from real estate and investments, the kind of family that had portraits lining the hallways and summer homes they barely used. Maya came from a working-class background. Her father had been a mechanic, her mother a teacher. They had worked hard their entire lives to give Maya a good education, to help her become a nurse. But they had both passed away in a car accident 3 years before she met Daniel. Maya had no siblings, no extended family she was close to. She was alone in the world. In many ways, marrying into the Harrison family gave her something she had lost, a sense of belonging, of home, of being part of something bigger than herself. But Evelyn, Daniel's mother, never let her forget where she came from. From the very beginning, Evelyn made it clear that Maya wasn't good enough, not refined enough, not educated at the right schools, not connected to the right people. At the engagement party, Evelyn had pulled Maya aside, smiled that cold smile of hers, and said, "I hope you understand what you're getting into, dear. This family has standards, expectations. I'm sure you'll do your best to meet them." Maya had smiled back, tried to laugh it off, but the message was clear. You don't belong here, and you never will. Every family gathering after that was filled with subtle digs, backhanded compliments, and icy smiles that never reached Evelyn's eyes. She would compare Maya to Daniel's ex-girlfriend, a woman named Victoria, who came from a similar social class and had gone on to marry a senator. Victoria always knew how to dress for these events, Evelyn would say, looking Maya up and down. She understood the importance of presentation. She would comment on Maya's accent, the slight southern lilt she had picked up from her mother. "Where did you say you were from again, Maya? It's so quaint." She would ask Maya about her family in front of other guests, knowing full well that Maya's parents were dead. No family at all. How tragic. "I suppose that's why you cling to Daniel so tightly." And Daniel? He never defended her. Not once. At first, Maya told herself it didn't matter. She told herself that love was enough, that time would soften Evelyn's heart, that Daniel's silence was just him trying to keep the peace. She made excuses for him. He was close to his mother. He didn't want to create conflict. He loved her, even if he didn't always show it in front of his family. But over the years, something shifted. The warmth that had drawn her to Daniel in the first place began to fade. He became distant. He started coming home late, claiming work meetings and business dinners. He stopped asking about her day, stopped touching her the way he used to, stopped looking at her like she mattered. Their conversations became transactional. "Did you pay the electric bill? What time is dinner? I'll be late tomorrow night. Don't wait up." The intimacy they once shared disappeared. They slept in the same bed but felt miles apart. Maya tried to fix it. She planned date nights that Daniel cancelled. She suggested couples therapy that he dismissed. She cooked his favorite meals, wore the lingerie he used to love, tried everything she could think of to bring back the man she had married, but nothing worked. And then there was the perfume, a scent that didn't belong to her, clinging to his shirts, his jacket, his car, something floral and expensive, with a hint of vanilla. When she asked him about it, he laughed it off, said it was a colleague, said she was being paranoid. "You're imagining things, Maya. You need to relax." But Maya wasn't imagining things. She knew what she smelled. She knew what she saw. And she started noticing other things too. Whispered phone calls that ended the moment she walked into the room. Daniel stepping out to the garage to take calls he said were about work. Text messages that made him smile in a way he hadn't smiled at her in years. Bank statements that didn't add up. Large withdrawals with no explanation. Money moving between accounts she didn't have access to. A charge for a hotel room in a city he claimed he had never visited. A receipt for jewelry she had never received. And then one day, she found a business card on the kitchen counter. A divorce attorney. The name on the card was someone well known in their city. Someone who specialized in high-asset divorces and protecting wealthy clients. Maya stared at that card for a long time, her hands shaking, her mind racing. Why would Daniel have a divorce attorney's card? Was he planning to leave her? And if so, why hadn't he said anything? That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed beside him, listening to him breathe, wondering who he had become, wondering when she had stopped being enough. And then, a few nights later, everything became clear. It was late. Maya had just finished a 12-hour shift at the hospital and had come home exhausted. She thought Daniel was asleep. She thought she was alone. But as she walked past his office, she heard voices, Daniel's voice, and Evelyn's. They were on speakerphone. Maya froze in the hallway, her hand pressed against the wall. She should have walked away. She should have gone to bed. But something made her stay. Something made her listen, and what she heard shattered her world. Evelyn's voice came through the phone, sharp and insistent. "Daniel, we've talked about this. You can't keep putting it off. Every day you stay married to that woman is another day you're wasting. She's holding you back. You know it. I know it. It's time to end this." Daniel sighed. Maya could picture him sitting at his desk, rubbing his temples the way he did when he was stressed. "I know, Mum. I know. But it's complicated. The timing has to be right." "The timing?" Evelyn's voice rose. "Daniel, you've been saying that for a year. A year. How much longer are you going to let her drain your resources, your time, your energy? She brings nothing to this family. No connections, no money, no class. She's a nurse. For God's sake. A nurse. You could have married Victoria. You could have married someone who would have elevated this family. Instead, you married her." Maya's heart was pounding so hard she thought they might hear it through the door. She pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from making a sound. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I know, Mum. You're right. I'll handle it. I just need to wait until after Thanksgiving. I don't want to ruin the holiday." "Ruin the holiday?" Evelyn laughed, cold and bitter. "Daniel, the holiday is already ruined as long as she's sitting at our table. But fine. Wait until after Thanksgiving. Then I want her gone. Do you understand me? Gone." There was a pause. Then Daniel said, "What if she fights it? What if she tries to take half of everything?" Evelyn's voice became calculating. "That's why you need to be smart about this. You've already started moving assets, yes? Into accounts she can't access?" "Yes," Daniel said. "I've moved most of it. The lawyer said it might not hold up in court, but it'll make things more difficult for her." "Good," Evelyn said. "And what about the credit cards? Did you open those in her name like I suggested?" Maya's blood ran cold. "I did," Daniel said. "She doesn't know about them yet. By the time she finds out, there'll be thousands in debt attached to her name. It'll make her look irresponsible, like she was spending recklessly." Evelyn made a sound of approval. "Perfect. And the trust? You've made sure she has no claim to it." "I talked to the lawyers," Daniel said. "They said that because we never had children, she has no automatic claim to the family trust. And since you control it, you can make sure she never sees a dime." "Excellent," Evelyn said. "Now, about Stephanie. Are you still seeing her?" Maya felt like she had been punched in the stomach. Stephanie. A name. The perfume had a name. "Yes," Daniel said, and there was a warmth in his voice that Maya hadn't heard in years. "We're still together. She's everything Maya isn't. She gets it. She understands the kind of life I want to live." "Good," Evelyn said. "Then once you're free of Maya, you can move forward with Stephanie. She comes from a good family. Her father owns that tech company. She'll be an asset to you, unlike your current situation." Daniel laughed. Actually laughed. "Thanks, Mom. I appreciate you helping me through this." "Of course, darling," Evelyn said. "That's what mothers are for. Now get some rest. And remember, after Thanksgiving, no more delays. I want her out of our lives." The call ended. Maya stood in the hallway, trembling, tears streaming down her face. She felt like the floor had opened up beneath her. Like everything she thought she knew, everything she thought she had, was a lie. They weren't just planning to divorce her. They were planning to destroy her, to leave her with nothing, to bury her under debt and make sure she couldn't fight back. And Daniel, the man she had loved, the man she had built a life with, was doing it willingly, eagerly. He wasn't some victim of his mother's manipulation. He was a willing participant. He wanted this. He wanted her gone. Maya went to the bathroom and locked the door. She sat on the cold tile floor and sobbed, her hands pressed to her mouth to muffle the sound. She felt like she was breaking into 1,000 pieces. But then, slowly, something else began to rise inside her. Anger. white-hot, burning anger. They thought she was weak. They thought she was stupid. They thought she would just roll over and let them destroy her. But they were wrong. Maya stood up, washed her face, and looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy. But there was something new there too. A hardness, a determination. She whispered to her reflection, "If they want a fight, I'll give them one." That night, Maya didn't sleep. She sat in the guest room with her laptop and began to search. She looked up the divorce attorney whose card Daniel had left on the counter. She read reviews, case histories, strategies. Then she looked up other attorneys, ones who specialized in protecting people in situations like hers, ones who had reputations for being aggressive, relentless. She found one named Richard Chen. His website was simple, but his credentials were impressive. He had worked on some of the biggest divorce cases in the state. He had a reputation for protecting the underdog, for finding leverage where none seemed to exist. Maya sent him an email at 3 a.m, explaining her situation, asking if he could help. She didn't expect a response until the next day, but he replied within an hour. "Mrs. Harrison, I'd be happy to meet with you. Come to my office tomorrow afternoon, and bring any documentation you have. We have a lot of work to do." Maya closed her laptop and allowed herself a small, grim smile. They thought they were 3 steps ahead of her, but she was about to prove them wrong. The next afternoon, Maya called in sick to work for the first time in years. She told her supervisor she had a migraine, that she needed to rest. It wasn't entirely a lie. Her head was pounding, her body exhausted from lack of sleep and emotional devastation. But she didn't rest. Instead, she drove across town to Richard Chen's office, a sleek building in the financial district with glass walls and modern art in the lobby. When she walked into his office, Richard stood to greet her. He was in his late 40s, with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor that immediately put her at ease. "Mrs. Harrison," he said, shaking her hand. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit down." Maya sat across from him and, for the first time since she had overheard that phone call, she allowed herself to breathe. Richard opened a notepad and looked at her with genuine concern. "Tell me everything. Don't leave anything out. Even the smallest detail could be important." So, Maya told him. She told him about Daniel's affair with Stephanie, about the perfume, the late nights, the distance that had grown between them. She told him about Evelyn's treatment of her over the years, the constant belittling, the way she had never been accepted into the family. She told him about the business card, the whispered phone conversation, the plans to leave her with nothing. And she told him about the credit cards Daniel had opened in her name, the money he had moved into accounts she couldn't access, the way they were systematically preparing to destroy her financially. Richard listened without interrupting, taking notes, his expression growing more serious with every revelation. When Maya finished, he leaned back in his chair and let out a slow breath. "Mrs. Harrison, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. What your husband and his mother are doing is not just unethical, some of it is illegal. Opening credit cards in your name without your consent is fraud. Moving marital assets into hidden accounts is illegal dissipation of assets. And if his mother has been mismanaging the family trust the way you suspect, that's financial fraud." Maya's eyes widened. "So, I have a case," Richard smiled. "You have more than a case. You have leverage. But we need to be strategic. If we confront them now, they'll cover their tracks. We need evidence. As much as possible. Can you do that?" Maya nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes." Over the next 3 weeks, Maya became someone she didn't recognize. On the surface, everything was normal. She woke up every morning, made Daniel breakfast, kissed him on the cheek, and sent him off to work with a smile. She answered Evelyn's phone calls with polite cheerfulness, agreed to help with the Thanksgiving preparations, played the role of the dutiful daughter-in-law. But behind the scenes, she was building a case. Richard had given her specific instructions: document everything, record conversations, gather financial records, track his movements. So she did. She installed monitoring software on Daniel's laptop, the kind that allowed her to see everything he did remotely. Every email he sent, every website he visited, every document he opened. It was shockingly easy. Daniel had never changed his passwords. He had never suspected that Maya would fight back. At night, after Daniel fell asleep, Maya would sit in the guest room with her laptop and go through everything. She found emails between Daniel and Stephanie that made her stomach turn. Messages that were intimate, affectionate, filled with plans for a future that didn't include Maya. There were photos, selfies of them together in hotel rooms, at restaurants, on weekend trips Maya hadn't known about. Stephanie was beautiful, younger than Maya by almost 10 years, blonde, polished, confident, everything Evelyn had wanted for her son. In one email, Stephanie wrote, "I can't wait until she's finally out of the picture, then we can start our real life together." Daniel had responded, "Soon, babe, I promise, just a little longer." Maya took screenshots of everything. She saved them to a hidden folder, backed them up on a separate hard drive, and sent copies to Richard. She also found financial records that confirmed everything she had overheard. Daniel had opened 3 credit cards in her name over the past 6 months. The total debt was over $30,000, charges for hotels, jewelry, expensive dinners, all for his affair with Stephanie. Maya also discovered that Daniel had been moving money out of their joint accounts for over a year. Small amounts at first, a few hundred here and there. But recently, the amounts had gotten larger, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, all transferred into accounts she didn't have access to. Richard helped her freeze those accounts. He filed emergency motions to prevent Daniel from moving any more assets, but kept them sealed so Daniel wouldn't know until the right moment. Maya also went through Evelyn's communications with Daniel. She found emails discussing the family trust, conversations with the family's accountant about how to protect the assets from Maya's potential claim. And then she found something that made her pause. Documents showing that Evelyn had been siphoning money from the trust for years. Hundreds of thousands of dollars moved into personal accounts, used for investments that had nothing to do with the family's legitimate business. Evelyn had been stealing, and Daniel knew. He had signed off on some of the transfers. They were both complicit. Maya brought all of this to Richard. He spread the documents across his conference table and shook his head in disbelief. "This is worse than I thought. If we play this right, you won't just protect yourself. You'll destroy them." Maya felt a surge of something dark and satisfying. Good, but it wasn't easy. There were nights Maya broke down. Nights she cried so hard she thought she might be sick. She would look at Daniel sleeping peacefully beside her and want to scream. How could he do this? How could he betray her so completely and then sleep without a care in the world? She also struggled with fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of losing everything. Fear of what would happen when this all came to light. She had been with Daniel for 12 years. He was all she had. What if she couldn't make it on her own? What if she ended up with nothing? But then she would remember Evelyn's voice on that phone call, dripping with contempt. She would remember Daniel laughing about ruining her credit. And the fear would turn back into anger, into resolve. Richard also helped her protect herself financially. He advised her to open a separate bank account in her name only and to start moving small amounts of money into it. "Nothing that will raise red flags," he said. "Just enough to make sure you have something to fall back on." Maya followed his advice. She also made copies of every important document she could find: marriage certificate, tax returns, property deeds, insurance policies, everything. She kept some copies at Richard's office. Others she mailed to a trusted friend from work, a nurse named Lisa, who had been with her through thick and thin. Lisa didn't ask questions. She just hugged Maya tightly and said, "Whatever you need, I'm here." Maya also discovered more about Stephanie. She wasn't just Daniel's mistress. She was calculating. She had researched the Harrison family before she even met Daniel. She knew about their money, their connections. She had positioned herself deliberately, attending the same charity events, joining the same country club, making sure she was in Daniel's orbit. She was a social climber, and Evelyn loved her for it. In one email, Evelyn had written to Daniel, "Stephanie is exactly the kind of woman you should have married from the beginning. Intelligent, sophisticated, from a good family. She'll be an asset to your career. Unlike Maya, who is nothing but dead weight." Maya read that email 3 times, each time feeling a fresh stab of pain. Dead weight, that's what she was to them. Something to be discarded, but not anymore. One evening, about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Maya was going through Daniel's recent emails when she found something that made her blood boil. Daniel had written to his lawyer, "What can we do to minimize what Maya gets in the divorce? I don't want her taking half of everything. She doesn't deserve it. The lawyer had responded with several strategies, claiming that Maya had been unfaithful, even though she hadn't, arguing that she had contributed nothing to the marriage financially, ignoring the fact that she had supported Daniel emotionally and managed their home for years, suggesting that they paint her as unstable, emotionally volatile, to make her seem unfit to handle assets. They were planning to destroy her reputation, to make her look like the villain. Maya forwarded the email to Richard with a single message. "Is this legal?" Richard responded immediately. "No, and it gives us even more ammunition. Stay strong, we're going to bury them." And then, one evening in mid-November, the Thanksgiving invitation arrived. It was from Evelyn, as always, a formal card with gold lettering, inviting them to the annual Harrison family Thanksgiving dinner at the estate. Maya stared at the card for a long time. She knew what was coming. She had overheard enough conversations to piece it together. This was when they planned to humiliate her. This was when Evelyn was going to hand her the divorce papers in front of the entire family, force her to sign them, make a spectacle of her failure. But Maya had a different plan. She called Richard. "I want to be there," she said. "I want to face them." Richard was quiet for a moment. "Are you absolutely sure? This could get very ugly, very fast. They're going to try to humiliate you." "I know," Maya said, "but I'm not going to run. I'm not going to hide. I'm going to look them in the eye and show them exactly who they've been underestimating." Richard paused, then said, "All right, but we do this my way. You bring your own envelope, and you don't open theirs until you're ready to reveal yours. Understood?" "Understood," Maya said. She spent the next few days preparing. She put together copies of every piece of evidence she had gathered, the emails, the financial records, the photos of Daniel and Stephanie, the documents showing Evelyn's fraud. She organized everything into a golden envelope, the color a deliberate contrast to the pink one she knew Evelyn would bring. And then, the night before Thanksgiving, Maya did something she hadn't done in a long time. She prayed, not because she was particularly religious, but because she needed strength. She needed to believe that justice was possible, that standing up for herself was the right thing to do. She whispered into the darkness, "Please, let tomorrow be the day I take my life back." Thanksgiving arrived with a crispness in the air that made everything feel sharper, more vivid. The Harrison family estate looked like something out of a luxury magazine. The circular driveway was lined with luxury cars. Inside, the mansion was decorated with an almost aggressive elegance. Fresh flower arrangements on every table, candles in ornate holders casting a warm glow. The smell of roasted turkey, sage stuffing, and cinnamon filled every room. Maya arrived with Daniel, wearing a simple black dress she had chosen carefully. Nothing too flashy, nothing that would give Evelyn ammunition for criticism. She had spent an hour that morning doing her hair and makeup, making sure she looked composed, unshakable, dignified. When they walked through the door, Evelyn was there to greet them, wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Maya made in a month. She looked Maya up and down with that familiar cold assessment. "Maya, darling," Evelyn said, her voice dripping with false warmth. "So glad you could make it. I was worried you might not feel comfortable." Maya smiled, meeting Evelyn's eyes directly. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, Evelyn. Family is so important, don't you think?" Something flickered in Evelyn's expression. Surprise? Maybe, or suspicion. But she recovered quickly, turning to greet other guests. The house was full. Daniel's siblings were there with their spouses and children. His younger brother, Marcus, who had always been kind to Maya. His older sister, Catherine, who had adopted her mother's disdain. Evelyn's sister, Diane, a woman who had made a career out of judging people. Various cousins, friends, and business associates. At least 30 people, all dressed impeccably, all playing their roles in the Harrison family performance. Maya moved through the crowd, accepting hugs and handshakes, making small talk about the weather and the holiday. She caught Daniel watching her several times, a puzzled expression on his face. She could almost read his thoughts. Why is she so calm? Why isn't she anxious? He had no idea what was coming. None of them did. Dinner was served in the grand dining room, a space that could easily seat 50 people. The table stretched nearly the length of the room, covered in white linen, fine china, and crystal glasses that caught the candlelight. Maya found herself seated near the middle of the table, with Daniel across from her and Evelyn at the head. It was a power move. Positioning. Evelyn wanted everyone to see what was about to happen. The meal began normally enough. Servants brought out course after course: butternut squash soup, a salad with pomegranate and candied pecans. The turkey, golden and perfectly roasted, carved at the table with ceremonial precision. Conversation flowed around Maya. People discussed business deals, upcoming vacations, the latest gallery opening. She participated when addressed, smiled at the right moments, but her mind was elsewhere. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. In her purse, resting on the floor beside her chair, was the golden envelope. Everything she needed was in there. All the evidence, all the truth. She was ready. Dessert was served: pumpkin pie, apple tart, a chocolate mousse that looked almost too beautiful to eat. And that's when Evelyn made her move. She stood up slowly, gracefully, her wine glass in hand. The room gradually fell silent, conversations trailing off as people realized something was happening. Evelyn tapped her glass with a spoon, the crystal ringing clear and sharp. "Everyone," she said, her voice carrying authority, "I'd like to make a toast." People raised their glasses, expecting the usual platitudes about family and gratitude, but Evelyn's eyes were locked on Maya. "To family," Evelyn began. "To tradition, to the strength it takes to make difficult decisions, and to the courage to acknowledge when something isn't working." The room shifted uncomfortably. A few people exchanged glances. Catherine was smiling slightly, like she knew what was coming. Marcus looked confused. Maya sat perfectly still, her expression neutral. Evelyn reached into her designer purse and pulled out a pink envelope. It was thick, official-looking. She held it for a moment, letting the tension build, and then slid it across the table toward Maya. The envelope came to rest directly in front of Maya's dessert plate. The room was completely silent now. Even the children seemed to sense that something important was happening. Maya looked down at the pink envelope. She didn't reach for it, didn't open it. She knew exactly what was inside. Evelyn's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "Maya, I think it's time we all stop pretending. You've been a part of this family for 12 years, but it's clear that this arrangement isn't working anymore. Daniel deserves to move forward with his life, and frankly, so do you. Inside that envelope, you'll find everything you need to make this transition as smooth as possible." Maya looked up, meeting Evelyn's eyes. The older woman was smiling, confident, certain of her victory. Daniel, sitting across from Maya, had his phone out. He wasn't even trying to hide it. He was recording, just as Maya had known he would. He wanted to capture her humiliation, her breakdown, her defeat. But Maya's face remained calm. She reached down slowly and pulled her own envelope from her purse, the golden envelope. She placed it on the table in front of her, directly next to the pink one. The contrast was striking. The room seemed to hold its breath. Evelyn's smile faltered slightly. "What's that?" she asked, her voice sharp. Maya looked around the table, making eye contact with each person there. With Marcus, who looked genuinely concerned. With Catherine, whose smirk was fading. With Daniel, whose phone was still recording. And then she looked at Evelyn. "You're right, Evelyn," Maya said quietly, her voice steady and clear. "It is time to stop pretending." She opened the golden envelope and began to pull out documents, placing them on the table one by one. The first document was a printout of text messages between Daniel and Stephanie. The messages were explicit, undeniable proof of an ongoing affair. Maya didn't read them aloud. She simply placed the page on the table where everyone could see. Daniel's face went white. His phone slipped from his hand, clattering against his plate. The second document was a series of financial statements showing the credit cards Daniel had opened in Maya's name. $30,000 in fraudulent debt, all charged to accounts she had never authorized. The third document was a record of money transfers from their joint accounts into hidden accounts in Daniel's name only. Over $100,000, moved systematically over the course of a year. Murmurs started around the table. People leaned in, trying to see what Maya was revealing. Evelyn's face was beginning to flush. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded. Maya ignored her and continued. The fourth document was a printout of emails between Daniel and Evelyn, discussing their plan to get rid of Maya. She placed this one directly in front of Evelyn. And then came the most devastating documents. Financial records showing that Evelyn had been mismanaging the family trust for years, transfers of funds into personal accounts, investments that had nothing to do with the family's legitimate business, evidence of tax fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement. Maya placed each page carefully, methodically, like she was laying out cards in a game. When she finished, she looked up. The entire table was staring at her. Some faces showed shock, others showed confusion. A few showed the beginning of understanding and, perhaps, respect. Maya's voice, when she spoke, was calm but carried a weight that made everyone listen. "You want a divorce, Daniel? Fine, but you're not going to walk away clean. You've been funneling money out of our joint accounts for over a year. You've opened credit cards in my name without my knowledge or consent. That's fraud. You've been planning this divorce for months, consulting with attorneys, developing strategies to leave me with nothing. And you thought I was too stupid, too trusting, too weak to notice." She turned to Evelyn. "And you've been stealing from your own family's trust. You've mismanaged funds, hidden assets, and committed financial crimes. You thought that because I didn't come from money, because I didn't have your connections, I wouldn't be able to fight back. You thought you could humiliate me in front of everyone, and I would just accept it, that I would sign those papers, walk away quietly, and let you destroy me." Maya's voice grew stronger, more confident. "But I have copies of everything. Every email, every transaction, every lie, every fraudulent charge, every conversation where you planned how to ruin me. I've already filed legal claims. The court has frozen the assets you tried to hide, Evelyn. There's an investigation underway into your mismanagement of the family trust. And Daniel, those credit cards you opened in my name? That's identity theft. That's fraud. And I have documentation proving that you did it deliberately, with the intention of destroying my credit and my financial standing." The room erupted. People started talking at once, voices rising in shock and confusion. Marcus stood up, his face pale. "Is this true? Mom, is this true?" Catherine was staring at the documents, her hand over her mouth. Other family members were looking between Evelyn, Daniel, and Maya, trying to process what they were hearing. Evelyn's face had gone from flushed to a deep crimson. "You have no right to bring this filth into my home. You have no right to make these accusations." Maya stood up slowly, gathering her documents back into the golden envelope. Her voice, when she spoke, was ice. "I have every right. You brought divorce papers to a family dinner. You planned to humiliate me in front of everyone. You orchestrated this entire scene. But you made one critical mistake. You underestimated me. You thought I was weak. You thought I was stupid. You thought I would just accept whatever you decided for me." She looked at Daniel, who was sitting frozen, his face a mask of shock and growing panic. "I spent 12 years trying to be enough for you. I supported you. I stood by you. I loved you. And you repaid me by stealing from me, lying to me, and planning to destroy me. You and your mother thought you were so clever, moving money, opening fraudulent accounts, planning every detail. But you forgot one thing. The quietest person in the room is often the one paying the most attention." Maya picked up her purse, tucked the golden envelope inside, and looked around the table one last time. "I have given the evidence to my attorney. He has filed claims with the court. There will be investigations. There will be consequences. And if either of you tries to retaliate, if you try to continue this campaign to destroy me, I will make sure that every person in your social circle, every business associate, every country club member knows exactly what you've done. Your reputation, Evelyn, the thing you value more than anything else in this world, will be destroyed. And Daniel, you'll lose everything you tried so hard to hide from me." She turned and started walking toward the door. Behind her, chaos erupted. Evelyn was shouting, her voice shrill and panicked. "You can't do this. You can't come into my home and make these accusations. I'll sue you for defamation." Daniel finally found his voice. "Maya, wait. Let's talk about this. Let's be reasonable." Maya stopped at the doorway and turned back. For the first time that evening, she allowed herself a small, cold smile. "Reasonable? You want to talk about being reasonable? You had 12 years to be reasonable. You had 12 years to treat me with respect, with honesty, with the basic dignity every human being deserves. Instead, you plotted against me. You stole from me. You tried to destroy me. Now you'll face the consequences." Marcus stepped forward, his face a mixture of anger and sadness. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. If I had known." Maya's expression softened slightly when she looked at him. "I know you didn't, Marcus. You were always kind to me. I appreciate that. But this family, this toxic, cruel family that values money and status over basic human decency, I'm done with it. I'm done trying to fit into a world that never wanted me. I'm done sacrificing myself for people who see me as nothing more than an obstacle." She looked back at Evelyn one last time. "You wanted me gone? Congratulations, you got your wish, but it's going to cost you everything." And with that, Maya walked out the door, leaving behind a room full of shocked faces, angry voices, and the ruins of the perfect family image the Harrisons had spent decades cultivating. She walked across the circular driveway, past the expensive cars, past the manicured gardens, and got into her own modest sedan. As she drove away from the estate, she could see through the rearview mirror that people were spilling out onto the front steps, still arguing, still processing what had just happened. Maya's hands were shaking now. The adrenaline that had kept her calm and focused during the confrontation was wearing off. She pulled over to the side of the road a few miles away and allowed herself to break down. She cried, deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place of pain she had been holding inside for so long. But mixed with the pain was something else: relief, freedom, pride. She had done it. She had stood up for herself. She had faced her abusers and exposed them. She hadn't backed down. She hadn't let them win. After a few minutes, she wiped her eyes, took a deep breath, and called Richard. He answered on the first ring. "How did it go?" Maya laughed, a sound that was half sob, half triumph. "Exactly as planned. Better, even. You should have seen their faces." Richard's voice was warm with approval. "I'm proud of you, Maya. That took incredible courage. Now, we wait. They'll try to retaliate. They'll try to discredit you, but we have everything we need. They can't touch you." "Thank you," Maya whispered. "For everything. For believing me. For helping me." "You did this yourself," Richard said. "I just provided the framework, the strength, the determination, the courage to face them. That was all you." When Maya hung up, she sat in her car for a long moment, watching the sun begin to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She thought about the life she was leaving behind, the mansion, the social status, the family she had tried so hard to belong to, and she realized that none of it mattered. None of it had ever mattered. What mattered was her dignity, her self-respect, her truth. She started the car and drove toward the small apartment she had secretly rented 2 weeks ago, the place where she would begin rebuilding her life, a life that belonged to her and no one else. The days following Thanksgiving were a whirlwind. Maya had expected retaliation, and it came quickly. The morning after Thanksgiving, she woke up to 17 missed calls from Daniel and 9 from Evelyn. She didn't return any of them. Instead, she forwarded all communication to Richard, who had instructed her not to speak directly to either of them. By Monday, Daniel had hired a new attorney, someone even more expensive and aggressive than the first one. They sent threatening letters, claiming that Maya had defamed the Harrison family, that she had stolen confidential documents, that she was attempting extortion. Richard responded swiftly and decisively. He provided the court with evidence of every claim Maya had made: the fraudulent credit cards, the hidden bank accounts, the emails discussing plans to destroy Maya financially, the evidence of Evelyn's mismanagement of the trust. Within a week, the tide began to turn. The court issued an order protecting Maya from any retaliation. The fraudulent credit cards were flagged, and the debt was removed from Maya's name. An investigation was opened into Evelyn's management of the family trust. A forensic accountant was appointed to review all financial transactions going back 5 years. Daniel's assets were frozen pending the outcome of the divorce proceedings. He couldn't access the money he had tried to hide. He couldn't transfer any more funds. He was stuck. And Evelyn? She hired a team of lawyers, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. The family trust had been mismanaged to the tune of over $2 million. Money that should have been invested for the benefit of the family had been diverted into Evelyn's personal accounts. Some of it had been used to buy a vacation property in Napa Valley that was in Evelyn's name only. Some had been invested in high-risk ventures that had nothing to do with the family business. The investigation uncovered years of financial misconduct, tax evasion, fraudulent reporting, money laundering through shell companies. It was a house of cards, and Maya had pulled out the foundation. The social consequences were swift and brutal. The Harrison family had built their reputation on the appearance of respectability, of old money and traditional values. But now, whispers spread through their social circles like wildfire. People who had attended that Thanksgiving dinner talked. They called friends, sent texts, shared the story at cocktail parties and country club gatherings. The woman they had dismissed, the nurse they had looked down on, had exposed the family's darkest secrets in front of everyone. Some people were sympathetic to Maya. They had seen how Evelyn treated her over the years, the subtle cruelty, the constant belittling. Now they understood what she had been enduring. Others, particularly those in Evelyn's inner circle, tried to defend her. They claimed Maya was lying, that she was bitter and vindictive. But the evidence was undeniable. Court documents became public record. Financial statements were reviewed by investigators. The truth couldn't be hidden anymore. Evelyn's reputation, the thing she had protected and cultivated her entire life, crumbled. She was dropped from the boards of several charitable organizations. Her country club membership was suspended pending investigation. Invitations to social events stopped coming. People who had been her friends for decades suddenly became unavailable. She was being erased from the social world she had dominated for so long. Daniel's situation was equally dire. His affair with Stephanie became public knowledge, and Stephanie, who had been so eager to be part of the Harrison family wealth and status, disappeared almost immediately. When she realized that Daniel was about to lose everything, that he would be saddled with legal fees and financial penalties, she ended the relationship over a text message. "I can't do this anymore. It's too much drama. I'm sorry." Daniel was devastated. He had thrown away his marriage, destroyed his relationship with his family, and committed fraud, all for a woman who abandoned him the moment things got difficult. He tried to reach out to Maya multiple times, leaving voicemails that ranged from angry to pleading. "You're destroying my life, Maya. You're ruining everything. Please, can we just talk? I made mistakes, but this is too much. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. Can we please figure out a way to fix this?" Maya never responded. She had said everything she needed to say at that Thanksgiving dinner. There was nothing left to discuss. The divorce proceedings moved forward. Richard was relentless, fighting for every asset, every dollar that Maya was entitled to. Daniel's lawyers tried to paint Maya as vindictive, as someone who was exaggerating the abuse and fraud, but the evidence spoke for itself. The court ruled in Maya's favor on nearly every point. She was awarded 50% of the marital assets, plus additional compensation for the fraudulent debt Daniel had created in her name. She was granted spousal support for 5 years, and most significantly, she was awarded a portion of Daniel's future earnings from the family trust once the investigation was complete and the assets were properly managed. Daniel would be paying for his betrayal for years to come. As for Evelyn, criminal charges were filed: fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion. Her legal team tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutors were unwilling to let her off easily. The case was too high profile, the evidence too damning. Eventually, Evelyn pled guilty to several charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. She was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of probation. She was also required to make full restitution to the family trust, an amount that exceeded $3 million with penalties and interest. For a woman who had spent her entire life obsessed with status and reputation, the fall was complete and absolute. The rest of the Harrison family struggled with the aftermath as well. Marcus, who had always been kind to Maya, reached out to her several weeks after Thanksgiving. They met for coffee, and he apologized profusely for his family's behavior. "I knew my mother could be difficult," he said, "but I had no idea it had gone this far. I'm so sorry, Maya. You deserved so much better." Maya accepted his apology. She could see that he was genuinely remorseful, that he was struggling with the revelation of who his mother and brother really were. "I appreciate that, Marcus. I really do. But I need to move forward now. I need to build a life that's mine." He nodded, understanding. "If you ever need anything, please let me know. I mean that." They parted on good terms, and Maya felt a sense of closure. Not everyone in the Harrison family was toxic. Some of them were just caught in the crossfire of Evelyn's cruelty and Daniel's betrayal. Catherine, on the other hand, remained loyal to her mother. She publicly defended Evelyn, claimed that Maya had orchestrated everything to steal from the family. But her protests fell on deaf ears. The evidence was too strong, and Catherine's reputation suffered by association. Over the months that followed, Maya focused on rebuilding her life. She threw herself into her work at the hospital, finding solace in helping others. The parents of her young patients reminded her why she had become a nurse in the first place, to make a difference, to bring comfort and healing to people in their darkest moments. She also started therapy, a kind, patient woman named Dr. Ellen, who helped Maya process the trauma of the past 12 years, the gaslighting, the emotional abuse, the betrayal, the fear. "You've been through something that would break most people," Dr. Ellen told her during one session. "But you didn't break, you fought back. That takes extraordinary strength." Maya wasn't sure she felt strong. Most days, she felt exhausted, emotionally drained, uncertain about the future. But slowly, with Dr. Ellen's help, she began to heal. She began to understand that what had happened to her wasn't her fault, that she hadn't failed at her marriage, that she had been targeted and manipulated by people who saw her as an obstacle rather than a person. And gradually, she began to reclaim herself, the parts of her personality that had been suppressed during her marriage, the joy, the humor, the spontaneity. She reconnected with old friends she had lost touch with. She joined a book club at the local library. She took a painting class on Saturday mornings, something she had always wanted to do but never had time for. She started running in the mornings, finding peace in the rhythm of her feet on the pavement, the cool air in her lungs, the sunrise painting the sky. 6 months after that Thanksgiving dinner, Maya received a call from Richard. "The investigation is complete," he said. "Evelyn is headed to prison next month. The trust has been restructured and is now under independent management, and your portion of the settlement has been finalized. You're going to be okay, Maya. Financially, emotionally, you're going to be okay." When Maya hung up the phone, she sat on her balcony with a cup of tea and allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had happened. She had lost a marriage. She had lost a family. She had been betrayed by people she loved and trusted. But she had also gained something invaluable. She had gained herself back. She had proven that she was strong, that she could stand up for herself, that she wouldn't be destroyed by people who saw her as less than. And that was worth more than any mansion, any social status, any connection to the Harrison family name. She thought about the woman she had been a year ago, scared, uncertain, desperate to hold on to a marriage that was killing her slowly. And she barely recognized that woman anymore. She had been transformed by fire, burned down to her foundation, and rebuilt into something stronger, something unbreakable. A year after the Thanksgiving that changed everything, Maya's life looked completely different. She had sold everything that connected her to her old life. The jewelry Daniel had given her, most of which had been purchased with money from their joint accounts anyway. The expensive clothes Evelyn had insisted she needed for family events. Even her wedding ring, which she sold to a jeweler who didn't ask questions and gave her a fair price. With the money from the divorce settlement, Maya made careful, deliberate choices. She could have bought an expensive condo, could have lived a lifestyle similar to what she had known as Mrs. Harrison. But she didn't want that. She didn't want to chase the same status and materialism that had defined the Harrison family. Instead, she bought a modest but beautiful townhouse in a neighborhood she had always loved. It had a small garden where she planted tomatoes and herbs. It had large windows that let in natural light. It had enough space for her, and that was all she needed. She also did something she had been dreaming about for years. She went back to school. Maya had always wanted to become a nurse practitioner, to have more autonomy in treating patients, to be able to make a bigger impact. But during her marriage, Daniel had discouraged it. He said it was too expensive, too time-consuming, that it would take her away from her duties at home. Looking back, Maya realized it was just another way he had controlled her, keeping her dependent, keeping her from growing. Now, she enrolled in a nurse practitioner program at the local university. It was challenging, balancing full-time work with graduate-level coursework, but Maya threw herself into it with a determination that surprised even her. She studied late into the night, collaborated with younger classmates who reminded her that it's never too late to pursue your dreams, and discovered that she was actually brilliant at advanced pathophysiology and pharmacology. Her professors praised her clinical instincts and her compassionate approach to patient care. For the first time in years, Maya felt like she was building something, not for someone else, not to please a husband or impress a mother-in-law, but for herself. She also reconnected with parts of herself she had forgotten existed. She had always loved music, had played piano as a child, but had given it up years ago. Now, she bought a used keyboard and started teaching herself again, stumbling through pieces by Chopin and Debussy, feeling the music heal something deep inside her. She traveled, taking a solo trip to Maine where she stayed in a small coastal inn, walked along rocky beaches, and ate fresh lobster while watching the sunset. She went to New Orleans and listened to jazz in dimly lit clubs, danced with strangers who became friends for an evening, and felt alive in a way she hadn't felt in over a decade. She visited national parks, hiked through mountains, stood at the edge of the Grand Canyon, and felt the vastness of the world put her problems into perspective. Her friendships deepened too. Lisa, her co-worker from the hospital who had supported her through everything, became her closest confidant. They had wine nights where they talked about everything and nothing, laughed until their stomachs hurt, and reminded each other that female friendship is one of the most powerful forces in the world. Maya also made new friends through her graduate program, through her book club, through the painting class she continued to attend. She built a community around herself, a chosen family of people who valued her for who she was, not what she could provide or what family she belonged to. And slowly, gradually, Maya began to open herself up to the possibility of love again. Not immediately, not recklessly, but she started to believe that not all people were like Daniel and Evelyn, that there were good people in the world who were capable of honesty, loyalty, and genuine affection. She went on a few dates, nothing serious at first. A coffee here, a dinner there. Some were awkward and went nowhere. Others were pleasant but lacked chemistry. And then, about 18 months after her divorce was finalized, she met someone who made her remember why love was worth the risk. His name was Ben. He was a teacher at an elementary school, someone who had devoted his life to helping children learn and grow. They met at a community fundraiser for the children's hospital where Maya worked. He had organized a book drive, collecting thousands of books to donate to young patients. Maya was there representing the hospital, and when Ben handed her a box full of carefully selected picture books and novels, their eyes met and something clicked. They started talking, and hours passed without either of them noticing. They talked about their work, their passions, their dreams. Ben told her about a student he had who was struggling with reading, and how the breakthrough moment when the boy finally understood had brought him to tears. Maya told him about a little girl she had cared for who had been terrified of needles, and how they had worked together to create a bravery plan that helped her get through treatments. There was something different about Ben. He listened, really listened, when Maya spoke. He asked questions that showed genuine interest. He didn't talk over her or dismiss her thoughts. And when Maya mentioned, briefly and without detail, that she had been through a difficult divorce, Ben didn't pry. He simply said, "I'm sorry you went through that. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm here. And if you don't, that's okay too." That simple respect for her boundaries meant everything. They started seeing each other regularly. Casual at first, meeting for lunch between shifts, going to movies, taking walks through the city. Ben introduced her to his friends, a warm and welcoming group of teachers, artists, and activists who reminded Maya that there were entire communities of people who valued kindness over status, substance over appearance. And when Ben met Lisa and Maya's other friends, he fit in seamlessly, making everyone laugh with his stories about his chaotic but lovable students. 3 months into their relationship, Ben asked Maya about her past. They were sitting on her back porch, sharing a bottle of wine under the stars, and he said gently, "You don't have to tell me if you're not ready, but I'd like to know more about what you went through, if you're comfortable sharing." So Maya told him, not everything, not all the painful details, but she told him about the betrayal, about Evelyn's cruelty, about the Thanksgiving confrontation, about how she had fought back and reclaimed her life. Ben was quiet for a long time after she finished. Then he reached over and took her hand. "You're one of the strongest people I've ever met," he said. "What you did, standing up for yourself like that takes incredible courage. I'm honored that you trust me enough to tell me." Maya felt tears prick her eyes, not tears of sadness, but of relief, of gratitude. She had been so afraid that her past would scare people away, that the drama and pain of her previous life would be too much for anyone to handle. But Ben didn't run. He stayed. He listened. He supported her. Their relationship grew slowly, organically, without the rush and intensity that had characterized her relationship with Daniel. This was different. This was built on honesty, respect, and genuine affection. Ben didn't try to change her or control her. He celebrated her accomplishments, encouraged her dreams, and gave her space when she needed it. When Maya graduated from her nurse practitioner program, Ben was in the audience, cheering louder than anyone else. He had helped her study, brought her dinner during late-night cram sessions, and believed in her even when she doubted herself. At her graduation party, surrounded by friends and chosen family, Maya felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for where she was, but for the journey that had brought her there. The pain, the betrayal, the fight, all of it had shaped her into the woman she was now, stronger, wiser, free. She thought about the Maya who had sat at that Thanksgiving table, trembling as she opened a golden envelope and exposed the people who had tried to destroy her. She was proud of that woman, proud of her courage, and she knew that everything that had happened since that night had been worth it. 2 years after that fateful Thanksgiving, Maya was invited to speak at a local women's empowerment conference. The organizers had heard her story, though she had been careful about how much she shared publicly, and they thought her experience could inspire others. At first, Maya was hesitant. She didn't want to be defined by her past, didn't want to be the woman who exposed her husband and mother-in-law at Thanksgiving. But then she thought about all the women who might be in situations similar to what she had experienced. Women who were being gaslit, controlled, manipulated. Women who felt trapped and powerless. Women who needed to hear that they could fight back, that they could survive, that they could thrive. So she agreed. On the day of the conference, Maya stood backstage, her heart pounding, wondering if she had made a mistake. But when she walked out onto the stage and saw the audience, hundreds of women of all ages looking at her with expectation and hope, she knew this was exactly where she needed to be. She told her story, not with bitterness or anger, but with honesty. She talked about the warning signs she had missed, the ways she had made herself small to accommodate other people's expectations. She talked about the moment she discovered the truth and the choice she had to make: stay silent or fight back. She talked about the fear, the uncertainty, the nights she cried herself to sleep wondering if she was making the right decision. And she talked about the moment of truth, that Thanksgiving dinner when she finally stood up for herself, when she exposed the lies and reclaimed her power. She didn't glorify revenge. She didn't encourage people to be cruel or vindictive. Instead, she talked about the power of truth, of documentation, of knowing your rights and standing firm in your worth. "I didn't win because I was louder," Maya told the audience. "I didn't win because I was cruel or because I wanted to hurt them. I won because I knew the truth, and I had the courage to let that truth speak for itself. The most powerful thing you can do when someone tries to destroy you is to refuse to be destroyed, to stand firm in who you are and what you deserve." She talked about the aftermath too. The healing wasn't instant. It wasn't easy. There were days she doubted herself, days she felt broken, days she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. "But here's what I learned," Maya said, her voice strong and clear. "You don't heal by pretending the pain didn't happen. You heal by walking through it, by acknowledging it, by refusing to let it define you forever. Healing isn't linear. Some days you feel strong and powerful, ready to conquer the world. Other days you feel fragile and scared, like you might fall apart at any moment. And that's okay. That's normal. What matters is that you keep moving forward." When Maya finished speaking, the room erupted in applause. Women stood, some with tears streaming down their faces. During the Q&A session that followed, woman after woman came to the microphone to share their own stories of betrayal, of manipulation, of fighting back. One woman, probably in her 60s, said, "I stayed in an abusive marriage for 30 years because I was afraid of being alone, afraid of what people would think. Your story makes me wish I had found the courage earlier." But it also makes me realize it's not too late. Thank you." A younger woman, maybe in her 20s, said, "I'm in a relationship right now where I'm being controlled, and I've been making excuses for it. Hearing your story makes me realize I need to get out. I need to save myself before it's too late." After the conference, several women came up to Maya privately, asking for advice, for resources, for hope. Maya shared what she had learned: the importance of documentation, the value of finding a good attorney, the necessity of building a support system, the power of therapy and self-care. But most importantly, she told them, "You are stronger than you think. You are worth more than how they treat you, and you deserve a life where you are valued, respected, and loved. Don't settle for anything less." In the months that followed, Maya became an informal advocate for women going through similar situations. She volunteered at a local domestic violence shelter, teaching workshops on financial literacy and legal rights. She mentored women who were trying to leave toxic relationships, offering support and guidance. She used her own pain to help others, and in doing so, found a deeper sense of purpose. Maya also kept up with the aftermath of her own story. Evelyn served her 18 months in federal prison. When she was released, she was a shadow of the woman she had once been. Her reputation was destroyed. Her social circle had abandoned her. She moved to a different state to escape the stigma, living quietly and trying to rebuild what was left of her life. Marcus kept Maya updated occasionally, though they rarely spoke. He told her that their mother had become reclusive, bitter, consumed by anger over how everything had fallen apart. "She still blames you," Marcus said during one phone call. "She still thinks you destroyed the family. She can't accept responsibility for what she did." Maya felt a twinge of sadness, not for Evelyn, but for the fact that some people never learn. Some people never grow. They remain trapped in their own narratives, unable to see the truth, even when it's staring them in the face. Daniel fared slightly better, but only slightly. He had managed to keep his job, though his reputation in the business community was damaged. He dated occasionally but couldn't maintain any serious relationships. According to Marcus, Daniel had become paranoid, constantly worried that people were judging him, talking about him behind his back. "He asks about you sometimes," Marcus told Maya. "Wants to know if you're okay, if you're happy. I think he genuinely regrets what he did. Not enough to actually change, but enough to feel sorry for himself." Maya felt nothing when she heard this. No satisfaction, no anger, no sympathy. Daniel was simply part of her past now, a chapter that had closed. She had moved on. As for Stephanie, the woman Daniel had left Maya for, she had married someone else within a year, a wealthy businessman who could give her the lifestyle she wanted. Maya heard through the grapevine that Stephanie rarely even mentioned Daniel anymore, that she had erased that entire chapter from her life as if it had never happened. Maya found this oddly poetic. The woman who had called her an obstacle had moved on without a second thought, leaving Daniel to deal with the consequences of his choices alone. But Maya didn't dwell on any of them. She had built a new life, a better life, and she refused to let the ghosts of her past haunt her present. She was thriving. Her career as a nurse practitioner was flourishing. Patients requested her specifically, praising her compassionate care and her ability to really listen to their concerns. She specialized in pediatrics, working with children who were facing serious illnesses, and she found immense fulfillment in being able to make a difference in their lives. Her relationship with Ben continued to grow deeper and more meaningful. They talked about the future with excitement rather than fear. They discussed the possibility of buying a house together, maybe getting a dog, building a life that was simple but full of joy and authenticity. Ben never tried to rush her, never pressured her to move faster than she was comfortable with. He understood that Maya needed time to heal, to trust, to believe that this time was different. And it was different. So completely, wonderfully different. One evening, almost 3 years after that Thanksgiving dinner, Ben took Maya back to the place where they had first met, the community center, where he had organized the book drive. He had arranged a surprise. The room was filled with children from his school, from the hospital where Maya worked, and each child held a card they had made. Cards thanking Maya for taking care of them, for being kind, for making them feel brave. Maya stood in the center of the room, surrounded by these beautiful, resilient children, and felt tears streaming down her face. This was what mattered, Not money, not status, not belonging to the right family or wearing the right clothes. This, connection, purpose, love, making a difference in the lives of people who needed it. Ben walked up to her, smiling, and took her hand. "I wanted to remind you of who you really are," he said softly. "Not someone's wife, not someone's daughter-in-law, just Maya, a woman who changes lives every single day, a woman who is loved for exactly who she is." And in that moment, Maya understood something profound. The revenge she had served at that Thanksgiving dinner wasn't really about destroying Evelyn and Daniel. It was about refusing to be destroyed herself. It was about standing up and saying, "I matter, my truth matters, and I will not be silenced." And that, more than any legal victory or financial settlement, was what had set her free. So, let me ask you something. What would you have done in Maya's place? When you discovered that the people you loved and trusted were plotting against you, would you have confronted them immediately? Would you have stayed silent and left quietly? Or would you have done what Maya did, gathering evidence, preparing your case, and waiting for the perfect moment to expose the truth? Think about it honestly, because it's easy to say we would fight back when we're watching someone else's story. But when you're in the middle of it, when you're scared and hurt and uncertain, it's a different story entirely. Maya's journey wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense. It wasn't about hurting people who hurt her, although that certainly happened. It was about reclaiming her power, about refusing to be a victim, about standing up and saying, "I deserve better than this." How many of us stay in situations that are slowly destroying us because we're afraid of being alone, afraid of what people will think, afraid that we won't be able to make it on our own? Maya was afraid too, but she didn't let that fear stop her. And here's what I want you to take away from this story. The quietest person in the room is often the strongest. The person who smiles and nods while you're making your plans is often the one who's already 10 steps ahead of you. Never underestimate someone based on their kindness, their patience, or their willingness to keep the peace. Because sometimes that person is just waiting for the right moment to show you exactly who they are. If you're in a situation right now where you're being belittled, controlled, manipulated, or abused, please know that you have options. You have power. You have worth. It might not feel like it. You might feel trapped, helpless, like there's no way out, but there is. It starts with recognizing your own value. It continues with documentation, with building a support system, with finding people who can help you. And it culminates in the moment when you stand up and say, "Enough." You don't have to do it perfectly. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to take the first step. Talk to someone you trust. Research your options. Consult with a professional who can guide you. Begin the process of reclaiming your life. And if you're not in that situation but you know someone who is, be the person who listens without judgment. Be the person who offers support without trying to control their decisions. Be the person who reminds them that they deserve better. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person believing in us to give us the courage to believe in ourselves. Maya's story didn't end at that Thanksgiving dinner. That was just the beginning. The real story was what came after. The healing, the rebuilding, the discovery of who she was when she wasn't trying to please everyone else. And that's the story that matters most. Not the moment of confrontation, as dramatic as it was, but the years of work that followed, the therapy sessions, the late nights studying, the cautious steps toward trusting again, the slow, difficult process of becoming whole. If Maya's story resonates with you, if it makes you think about your own life, your own relationships, your own power, I want to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between staying silent and speaking your truth? What did you do? What would you do differently if you could go back? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. Your experience might give someone the courage to take that first step toward freedom. We're all connected by these experiences, by the struggles we face, and the strength we find within ourselves. And sometimes, knowing that we're not alone in our pain is the thing that helps us survive it. Maya's story also teaches us something important about forgiveness. Not the kind of forgiveness where you pretend nothing happened or where you allow people back into your life who haven't changed, but the kind of forgiveness that releases you from the burden of carrying hatred and bitterness. About a year into her therapy, Dr. Ellen asked Maya a question that changed her perspective. "Do you want to forgive them?" Maya's immediate response was defensive. "Why should I forgive them? They don't deserve it. They destroyed years of my life. They tried to ruin me financially and emotionally. Forgiveness feels like letting them off the hook." "Doctor," Ellen nodded thoughtfully, "I understand that, but forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. Forgiveness doesn't mean what they did was okay. It doesn't mean you have to reconcile with them or allow them back into your life. It simply means you're releasing the hold that anger has on your heart. You're choosing to stop letting them occupy space in your mind and your emotions." It took Maya a long time to understand this. For months, she carried anger like a shield, believing that if she let it go, she would somehow be vulnerable again. But gradually, she realized that the anger was exhausting her. It was keeping her tethered to Daniel and Evelyn, giving them continued power over her emotional state. So, she worked on forgiveness, not in a dramatic moment, not in a confrontation where she told them she forgave them, but quietly, privately, in her own heart. She acknowledged what they had done. She accepted that it had happened, and she chose to release the emotional grip it had on her. This didn't mean she forgot. It didn't mean she trusted them. It simply meant she was no longer willing to let them control her present by dwelling in the past. And in that release, Maya found an even deeper level of peace. She stopped checking to see what Daniel was doing on social media. She stopped asking Marcus for updates about Evelyn. She stopped rehearsing in her mind all the things they had done wrong and all the things she wished she had said differently. She simply let go. And in letting go, she created space for new things, new relationships, new experiences, new versions of herself that weren't defined by trauma or betrayal. This is perhaps the most important lesson of Maya's story. That healing isn't about getting revenge, although sometimes justice is necessary. It isn't about making the people who hurt you suffer, although sometimes there are natural consequences to their actions. Healing is about reclaiming yourself, about building a life so full of purpose and joy and meaning that the people who tried to destroy you become irrelevant. It's about waking up one day and realizing that you haven't thought about them in weeks, that when someone mentions their name, you feel nothing, no anger, no pain, just indifference. And that indifference, that complete lack of emotional investment in them, is the truest form of freedom. Think about the people in your life right now. Are there relationships that are draining you? Situations where you're constantly making yourself smaller to accommodate someone else's ego? Moments where you swallow your truth because speaking it might cause conflict? Maya lived that way for 12 years. 12 years of biting her tongue, of excusing bad behavior, of hoping that if she just tried harder, loved better, sacrificed more, things would change. But they never did, because the problem wasn't her. It was never her. The problem was that she was trying to earn love and respect from people who were incapable of giving it. People who saw relationships as transactions, who valued status over substance, who measured worth by wealth and connections rather than character. You cannot earn love from people who don't know how to give it. You cannot change people who don't want to change. You cannot fix relationships with people who don't see you as worth the effort. And the sooner you accept this, the sooner you can redirect your energy toward people and situations that actually deserve it. Maya spent 12 years trying to be enough for the Harrison family, and in the end, she realized that she was always enough. They were the ones who were lacking. They were the ones who couldn't recognize value when it was standing right in front of them. So, if you're in a situation right now where you're constantly trying to prove your worth, I want you to hear this clearly. You don't need to prove anything. Your worth is inherent. It's not based on what you achieve, what you look like, who you're connected to, or how much money you have. It's based on the simple fact that you exist, that you're a human being, deserving of dignity and respect. And anyone who makes you feel like you need to earn basic decency from them is someone who doesn't deserve a place in your life. Maya learned this lesson the hard way. But once she learned it, everything changed. She stopped seeking validation from people who were never going to give it. She stopped shrinking herself to fit into spaces that were never meant for her. And she started building a life on her own terms, surrounded by people who celebrated her rather than tolerated her. It's been 5 years now since that Thanksgiving dinner. 5 years since Maya slid a golden envelope across a table and changed her life forever. If you were to meet Maya today, you would see a woman transformed, Not because she's wealthier, although the divorce settlement gave her financial security. Not because she's famous, although she has become a respected voice in the advocacy community. But because she carries herself differently. There's a confidence in her walk, a strength in her voice, a light in her eyes that wasn't there before. She knows who she is now. She knows what she's worth. And she refuses to settle for anything less than what she deserves. Her relationship with Ben continues to flourish. They got married 2 years ago in a small ceremony, surrounded by close friends and chosen family. No elaborate production. No wealthy relatives making subtle criticisms. Just people who genuinely loved them, celebrating a union built on honesty, respect, and authentic connection. Maya wore a simple dress that she chose because she loved it, not because it fit anyone else's expectations. Ben cried when he saw her walking down the aisle. And when they exchanged vows they had written themselves, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "I promise to see you," Ben said, his voice thick with emotion. "Not who I want you to be or who I think you should be, but who you actually are, and to love that person with everything I have." Maya responded, tears streaming down her face. "I promise to never lose myself again, to stand in my truth even when it's difficult, and to build a life with you where we both get to be exactly who we are." That's what love looks like. Not the performance Maya had with Daniel, not the constant trying and failing and trying again, but a partnership between two people who see each other clearly and choose each other anyway. They have a daughter now, a beautiful 3-year-old named Grace. Maya sometimes watches her daughter playing, so free and confident and full of life, and thinks about the woman she wants Grace to become. Strong but kind, confident but humble, someone who knows her worth and refuses to accept less than she deserves. And Maya knows that the best way to teach her daughter these things is to model them herself, to show Grace what it looks like to stand up for yourself, to set boundaries, to walk away from situations that don't serve you, to build a life on your own terms. Sometimes, late at night after Grace is asleep and Ben is reading beside her, Maya thinks back to that Thanksgiving dinner. She thinks about the woman she was then, trembling as she placed a golden envelope on the table, uncertain if she was doing the right thing. And she wishes she could go back and tell that woman what she knows now, that everything would be okay, better than okay, that the pain she was walking through was leading her somewhere beautiful, that the courage it took to stand up for herself would open doors she couldn't even imagine, that the life she was about to build would be more fulfilling than anything she had lost. But she can't go back. None of us can. All we can do is move forward, and that's exactly what Maya did. She moved forward, step by step, day by day, through the fear and the uncertainty and the pain, until one day she looked around and realized she had built something extraordinary. Not a perfect life, there's no such thing, but a real life, an honest life, a life where she gets to be herself, completely and unapologetically, a life where she's surrounded by people who love her for who she is, not what she can provide, a life that belongs to her and no one else. And that, more than any revenge, more than any legal victory, more than anything else, is what true freedom looks like. So I'll ask you one final time, what would you do in Maya's situation? But more importantly, what are you going to do in your own situation right now, today, in this moment? Are you going to keep accepting less than you deserve? Are you going to keep shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that don't value you? Are you going to keep trying to earn love from people who are incapable of giving it? Or are you going to do what Maya did? Stand up, speak your truth, document your evidence, gather your strength, and when the moment is right, show the world exactly who you are and what you're worth. The choice is yours. It's always been yours. You just have to be brave enough to make it. Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Tell us your story. Tell us what resonated with you. Tell us what you're going to do differently because of what you've heard today. Because your voice matters, your story matters, and someone out there needs to hear it. If this story moved you, if it inspired you, if it made you think differently about your own life, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss stories like this one. Stories of courage, of resilience, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And remember, you are stronger than you think. You are worth more than you've been told. And you deserve a life where you are valued, respected, and celebrated for exactly who you are. Thank you for watching Maya's story. Thank you for being here. And thank you for being brave enough to consider what her journey might mean for your own. Until next time, keep standing in your truth. Keep fighting for your freedom. And never, ever, let anyone make you believe you're less than the remarkable person you are.